If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Lawful Stupid just jumped over. First of all, it's free, and we love that. Secondly, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, wherever you're at, all on the go. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you. There are a lot of other vendors out there, a lot of platforms that they will make sure your podcast gets to. So it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with zero minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hey there, beautiful, lawful, stupid listeners. Your bonus content time. That's right. This is bonus content, 100%. If you didn't know, if you haven't seen it on our social media feeds, if you did not somehow see it on our story, I just did a live session about it, literally for like an hour. Go check it out. It's on Instagram. I'll probably put it on YouTube or something else too. It'll be available. But basically, here's what we have. Here's what you're about to listen to. The intro cast to the podcast. I am not a professional. That's not what it's called. In fact, it is called the Into the Podcast Verse panel that I did at Dralacon. It's really good. I'm joined with so many cool guests. Sarah from Roll Like a Girl. I'm not fucking that up, I don't think. And then, I'm joined by Steven and Wade from Not Quite Heroes. And then I'm joined by another super special individual, an individual that you would never believe is super cool, and his name is Reality Storm, and I don't remember his actual name, but Reality Storm is super cool. So Reality Storm from North by Northwest, I had dinner with him. He was a very, very cool person. Everybody there was super cool. So I could talk forever about Dralacon and how cool it was and how everybody was amazing there, but without further ado, here's the panel on the podcast verse, which is essentially just how do you DM, how do you podcast, how do you split up roles, how do you run your podcast. I apologize, at the very end there is some gaps from where there weren't microphones for the guest questions. It's okay, we do miss a couple good questions, but another one is just Shane, and he asked Adam like 7 questions, and Adam is a good person and responds. No, I'm just kidding, Shane, I love you. So again, without further ado, here we go.
Hi guys. Hi everybody. I am Sarah. I am with the woman podcast called Roll Like a Girl. I almost forgot my podcast name. That's great. We're off to a great start. I am joined today by Steven Garcia with Not Quite Hero Podcast.
That's me.
I am also joined by Wade. I tried so hard. Wade Heisel with Not Quite Hero Podcast as well. I've got the lovely Joe Frankovich with North by Northwest Podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, he's dressed up lovely. I know, it's great. I am also joined by, who's down there? Hi. I have your name, but you're not sitting in my order that I didn't tell you to sit in. So that's Dwayne Pinton from Lawful Stupid.
Hey.
Yeah, woo! Go Lawful Stupid. And then I have the beautiful Adam DeWeese.
You nailed it.
Yeah! Nice.
My posse's not here yet.
Oneshot Onslaught and Halfway Heroes is who he's with.
Okay.
I'm going to nominate my groupies, which is Becca. I see you, Becca. You're my groupie now. Congratulations. So welcome to our panel. It's called Into the Pod... I messed that up. We're into the podcast verse, or do you want a podcast is how I've been kind of saying that. So let's get into some common topics we like to talk about in podcasting. The biggest one that we want to talk about is production and your quality and how you pull everybody together and all the equipment questions that every podcast gets. So first up, the equipment. What kind of setup do you have?
This is our equipment guide. So,
Okay.
yeah, most of what we use, at least half of us, are...
Microphone.
the ATR 2100s is what we have done. I think I got Adam wanted those at one point.
Yeah. that's what we're used to because of him.
Yeah,
Hey.
so predominantly that. Most of our recordings go through Discord, and then the Craig bot. I want to promote that because that's awesome.
Now recording.
As far as equipment-wise, that's
What software do you use to do any of your editing tools? Or
usually start with Audacity and then bring into Reaper.
okay. So what do you do in Audacity? Do you like use it to cut out some audio? Do you use it for noise reduction? Anything like that?
Noise reduction, normalizing, and peak limiting.
Oh, okay.
Then everything gets cut and sorted through Reaper.
Okay. All right, Mr. Joe, what does North by Northwest podcast use?
So it sounds like you guys do recording through Discord.
Yes.
So on North by Northwest, we're all located in Atlanta, so we all actually get together in one room. So we've got a Tascam mixer that's used, and everybody has their own individual mics. We use Shure 58s, SHURE, and so everybody gets their own channel through the mixer. We record into Audacity on David, one of the podcaster originators, Mac. Which is important because drivers have been a big issue, so we have to make sure that we're using the setup that has the right drivers that work. We record directly into Audacity, and then David and I share editing duties, and we use Reaper for the editing.
Okay. And my fun crew down there, what do you guys do? How do you do it?
So we all do it cheaply, I guess. We have USB snowball mics, and everybody records their own audio. And when you record, we have 4 different sound files, 4 or 5 if we have a guest, and then we just mash them all together. I was originally doing our audio editing, and I used Audacity, a combination of Audacity and GarageBand because I have a Mac and that was easy. Compression is really important, and noise reduction. And Audacity is a free program, and it does noise reduction really, really well for what it is. Now we use an audio editor actually, and that makes our life super easy.
Fancy. What do you use for the audio editor? What is that?
So we use Zach Shepard, the audio editor.
Oh,
the
a physical person.
Yes,
Okay.
he's way better than we are. So he's our audio mancer.
Yeah. Okay,
So
cool.
it's just USB. It's super simple.
Yeah, that's what we use, but I'm not here to talk about that. Adam.
So we actually started around the same table like Joe, and then we, when we were doing that, we all had the AT2100 mics, and we were going through a H6 Zoom through my laptop and all recording together on separate tracks. And then one of our members moved away to California. I think he was trying to get out of the podcast, but then we were like, nope, now we're going to record remotely. So now we do a Zoom call, and everybody records remotely in Reaper, and then at the end of the night they all send me their files and I edit in Reaper as well.
Okay. I'm just saying you're missing the opportunity for Craig on Discord because he will talk to you.
I know, but they talk so much. I don't think I need another person talking at me.
No, he just says hi and then moves on. Okay, well, that is good to know. It makes me feel better that some of us do some of the things the same way. So let's talk about how you found your group, how you found that group balance for editing. For editing, for setting up the roles of what people do. So, like, I was a DM and I had somebody else that, edited the podcast, and somebody helped us with the social media aspect. How do you guys decide who gets to do what? Or do you get to decide that or take those responsibilities on?
For us, originally, Ray was going to do basically everything. The rest of us were going to be players. And then as we were getting ready to start recording, we did a couple test episodes. We were just like, yeah, that's actually to DM and do all the editing and stuff is kind of a lot to do for one person. Right. And so we split that part. Now I do the DM side of this, the audio and action. As far as other stuff, it's just kind of been we just do stuff.
Yeah.
Really organized, really obviously system oriented.
If it works, then
So, yeah.
Okay, well, Joe, how do you guys decide that?
Well, when I joined the podcast, they had put out an open casting call with just 3 of them at the time, and they wanted another player. I ended up going to the audition, terrified out of my mind, and getting picked along with Elizabeth, who's in the audience right now. They were only supposed to be bringing on one, but they brought on two of us at the same time. So we joined after the podcast was already in progress, and a lot of those roles had already been assigned. I have since then taken on a lot of half of the editing duties, so I edit our side quests now. So that's been a real experience for me, learning from David, who started the podcast. He's an audiologist by trade. I forget who he works for, but he does a lot of audio stuff for his actual day job. So he's been a big help to me in teaching me how to get a lot of the silences out, and the ums and the uhs, and how to normalize the levels, and how to just do everything with the audio and how to make it sound really good. I got sort of, I wanted to really please everybody and accepted a little bit of that role when they asked for it. But otherwise, they'd already divided up those roles before I even got there.
Okay. All right, fun crew down there. Oh my God.
Yeah. So for us, we kind of made the podcast on a whim more than anything else. Like, hey, we play D&D, we're gonna make a podcast. So a lot of the original editing came to me because I have an IT background. So that's why I use GarageBand, and ultimately that's why our audio is not super great at the beginning. But as far as doing roles, we're really good about pitching in, and everybody oh, I want to do this now. Or if somebody's busy in their personal life, we shift everything around. We share a 1Password and then a Google Docs, and that's how we just keep each other informed. But right now, Devin runs a lot of our Patreon stuff, so he's really involved in making sure we have good goals. And if you sign up and you are so nice to donate to us, he's like, all right, cool, we have thank you notes. Who's gonna do that? Dwayne do those. Shane, can you order a t-shirt? Stuff like that. And really, it's just depending on what's going on. Everybody is in charge of something, and then we delegate duties, so nobody's getting overtaxed. We try our best to keep somebody from doing everything, except for Shane and Twitter, because he's way better at it than anybody else, so he runs our Twitter.
Joe Shane. Okay, Adam?
I need to be in the audience and listening to this because my middle brother Dustin back there with the glasses trying to hide. So I do I'm the DM for Halfway to Heroes and Oneshot Onslaught. And then I do the editing for both shows. And then I do the social media for both shows, Patreon for both shows. I do everything for everything, so we don't delegate.
Yeah, we're doing a casting call if you're interested.
I would love to play a D&D podcast and just chill and be a player. That sounds like the dream.
Yeah. So, one of the things I found with running the Roll Like a Girl account on Twitter with the help of some Theron, hi honey, is that a lot of what we do and a lot of ways that we get recognized is socialization and marketing ourselves out there. It's about connecting with other people. So did you guys have a hard time finding a connection to the rest of our big circle? By any means? Do you guys have
As far as
yeah, just putting yourself out there and letting people know that you're out there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been kind of a mixed bag for us. So we're only eight episodes.
Yeah, thereabout.
Yeah, we've got 8 episodes out, so we're really at the beginning of this whole podcasting thing. At least for this iteration of the podcast. And Wade does a really good job kind of connecting with other podcasts. And our podcast in particular, our world we have 14 different creators. Some of whom are here.
Hi.
Who built out nations in our world. So we already kind of started with a little bit of more of a network, I guess you'd say, than this 6 people taking on podcasts.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where it was. Coming up with the idea of trying to bring more people into it, like Adam down there and some of the other folks you'll see him out here. Gave us kind of that base to say, hey, we're trying to make this wholly and entirely a community-based and built product, I guess, for lack of a better word. So, it wasn't terribly difficult to find people that were interested in it. I think the most difficult part was you having to put it all together afterwards. But, by and large, just kind of putting it out there and interacted back and forth with the different podcasters that we're aware of. And, having those conversations and all.
Joe?
Well, I find social media to be terrifying. But again, I joined the podcast after it had already begun. So David, or Tiffany specifically, is great at networking, and I know she's gotten in touch with her. I've met more other podcasters just from this weekend than I had in the year and a half I've been on the podcast prior to this. So this has been how I found people so far.
So to talk to that, Devin and Shane are really good about reaching out to people on Twitter and Instagram and DMing them. So if you DM'd them, it's probably them, one of those two. The way I've personally found is we have a Discord, and then obviously we have socials, and we just value like talking to everyone as much as possible. If anybody talks, we talk back to them, and that's how we've like socialized with that's podcasts like. And the biggest thing that helped us, even if it didn't actually do anything for our following, helped us get out there was like reaching out to another podcast, like, hey, come on our show, like come play D&D with us, because at the end of the day, their audience may pick up it, but ultimately you get to talk to them and meet them and help build your network, and then you end up at Dralacon, right? Like, so that's one of the biggest things for us, which is just getting with the other shows, because the fan interaction or interacting with the other players is just going to follow that.
Right. Adam?
First I want to say their Discord really is magical. Our Discord's pretty active, chatting throughout the day. Their Discord I was actually in theirs before I even started ours, and their Discord's what made me want to even start a Discord for our group. But we actually got kind of lucky when we started. So I started Oneshot Onslaught almost a year ago to the day, and we got kind of lucky on social media because we run one-shots from other people on DM's Guild. So those people would have social media presences, and I would, reach out and be like, hey, we're running your module. It's coming out this Monday if you want to check it out. And they would, reach back to us, and that would kind of help us grow. And then when we started Halfway to Heroes, we kind of had, a bit of a following, and it kind of helped spread faster than Oneshot Onslaught did. So yeah, when we first started though, there was never any kind of it was always really opening, really welcoming. I've never talked to another podcast or as whether it be their Twitter page or somebody from a podcast or something that didn't seem 100% enthusiastic about either collaborating with you or helping spread the word about your show, or just being 100% supportive of you.
I can definitely attest to that. I know Fridays. I don't know about you guys who run the social media for your podcast, but my Fridays are wonderful and scary because I work during the day and Darren does too later in the day, and our notifications are just blown up. Just from networking with other podcasters on Follow Friday. I'm pretty sure that's how I found most of you guys. But I know Lawful, Stupid, and us worked together last year for your charity event. Whose name I suddenly forgot.
Min-Max Mankind.
Min-Max Mankind, yes. And we enjoyed doing that with you guys. It's a great way to, get out there and learn everybody and see what the community is able to give back.
I want to add one more thing. It was mentioned a little bit, but if you do want to do this podcasting community, you want to grow, and you want to, and this kind of applies to all social media. Yeah. People want to interact and be interacted with, right? And so that's just a huge part. And sometimes it takes a little extra work, and sometimes you might have to respond to somebody that, truthfully, you don't maybe even like that much, and that's okay. But you still should do the work to reach out and say, hey, like, even if it's just, hey, thanks for listening, hey, thanks for sharing, retweeting something that someone else who follows you does that's not related to your own podcast. Just the D&D community and the podcasting community and the RPG community is so cool because there's so many creative people doing so much awesome stuff. Put those other awesome things in the light a little bit, and that's how you start creating a real network where people also want to put your stuff in the light and do that kind of stuff. So,
no, that's a good add-on. There's a lot of creators in our community who build each other up, especially with like the dice people. There's so many dice companies that work together, and you see it happening all the time. Especially Ice Cream House. Ice Cream Dice. He is so neat. He will find other dice companies on Twitter and say, "Hey, why doesn't this person have 200 followers? Let's bump them up and promote them. They'll, donate his dice for charity, anything." So just having that interaction is very important in our community, and it builds a really good community. So with big groups comes big creativity, especially in the D&D or podcasting community. Everybody has their own ideas that they're trying to bring to the table, whether it be characters, plot, world building. Have you guys ever had any problems with any disputes? Any creative disputes within your group, and how did you handle those? That's gotta happen, right? Hey.
Yeah,
guys?
I mean, I'll take that first. That's fine. We as a group will monitor each other, right? So if we do something in the show that doesn't necessarily meet our par quality, we don't tend to edit things out typically, or like hard change things. But we've had things where we disagree. We actually very early in season 1 had a moment where the characters run into an obstacle, and the way I was going to shift them out kind of changed the narrative. It kind of took the long scenic route back to where they were going, and we recorded those 2 episodes, and at the end of the night, like literally they messaged me and were like, "Hey, can you hop back on? We want to talk about it." And all 3 of us talked together, and they were like, it just didn't feel narratively pleasing to us, or the way to go. And you have to, like, A, as a DM, and B, as like just a co-producer of something, have to be like, all right, that was my idea ultimately, and I have to like live with that. And so those are 2 episodes that have never been released because they 100% were the wrong direction ultimately. And so we have those conversations, and probably every 4 episodes Shane and I will have a disagreement about a rule or mechanic or an interaction. And early on it was very much like we would kind of disagree in the podcast and have to edit it out or shorten it. And now it's very much like, okay, yes, DM, and then we talk about it afterwards. It's really sorting out, just like another D&D game you would play, right? Like, it's about communicating with your coworkers.
Right. Joe, you have any disputes?
There have never been any big disputes in the time I've been on North or Northwest. Occasionally we will talk ahead of time if we have ideas for what the major beat of the story coming up is going to be. We don't actually know what it is, but the team will have ideas, and we'll discuss where it's going so that everybody knows what direction things are going to go, and that helps make a better story. We try to be very story focused and less mechanics focused, so we try to make sure there's a good narrative, even though most of the individual things that are extemporaneous, the major beats, we know kind of where it's going to head. So we haven't had many disputes because we kind of are already flowing the same way.
Right. Wade?
Yeah.
Steven? Guys, I mean, I know you guys are early into your early recording days.
Secretly, there's lots of stuff Wade does that makes me so.
Okay.
That's not true.
So that's not
not true
at the
at all.
table, and
You can fight
that
here.
later.
We'll
No.
place bets. You can fight here.
We talk. I talk with all of our players multiple times a week, especially in the week coming up to recording, about just how they're feeling about everything, what's going on. Wade and I talk almost pretty much every day about things from what sound effects to add in to if we need to cut something down, if we need to change the end of. We've had a couple times where we just had some technical stuff with like mics, and so like, okay, this wasn't how we planned on this episode going, but we had some audio issues, so how can we turn this into something that we can actually use?
That's where the last 2 episodes came from.
So,
Yeah, by and large, I don't think that there's anything that we've had dispute or differences in. I think, we're all, like they were saying, in the same line of flow and have the same goals, I guess.
so lots of conversation about like, okay, where should the story go? How should this work? What's the world like? What's right for this character? What's right for my character? Like lots of those conversations where we work through ideas, but never something like
against each other.
Yeah.
So, I want to interrupt real quick. You touched on something I should have said when you were talking about how do you record and stuff like that. So you talked about having an audio issue, right?
Right.
So what we have done, and it's actually worked out to our advantage, we record those individual files, right? But then I also record the entire Skype call, like of their end of it. So if something happens on their end or whatever, we have a backup audio. And it's just like, it's lower quality, but it's not that much lower quality. And in fact, some episodes we've used that, and people don't really notice the difference. I mean, it's a quality difference, but at least you don't lose a whole episode, because we've actually lost an entire episode before, and that's the worst feeling in the world. So
It is. I can attest to that. We have lost. There's the. I know. I see you guys. We had the great Arkansas hard drive crash, and I lost. I think 3, 2. No, I've lost 3, 4. There was 4 of them that we were trying to release, and 3 of them were with a guest. So I ad-libbed my parts. But just to kind of come back to that one, don't lose your audio.
backups.
Yeah.
Backups are really
Backups are
important.
really important,
Cloud
guys.
backups are better, because if something blows up, if you need to know about that, I'm an IT guy. Hit me up. I will send you the right service, please.
Yeah, North by Northwest lost 2 episodes once because a computer got lost, and what we ended up doing was we ended up rescheduling night and re-recording the episodes. We knew kind of what happened, and we wanted to make sure the plot beats got there so we could release something. But the actual, the finished episode, the individual details were different because we were still playing again, but we were trying to make sure we hit the same beats that we got in the first one, trying to remember what they were. But yeah, it's the audio was terrible.
You guys sound better than us. It would have been 2 totally different episodes if we redid it, like 100%.
I'm not sure we would have been able to redo it. Okay, well, moving on. So, do you guys get recording jitters when you record? Do you get excited? Do you get chatty? We record early in the morning, so we're tired and sleep deprived and coffee filled. So our recording jitters are a little loopy and goofy, but we get into it. Do you guys do?
Oh,
have those?
I'm physically shaking before we record it.
So this is a nightmare for you right now, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Started some new anxiety medicine this week though, so
Excellent.
yeah, no, I also say a lot. That last one was not on purpose, just so you know. Yeah, no, I get really anxious because I start going through the whole thing of okay, first and foremost, the people that are playing with me recording this podcast, are they enjoying this? I put all this effort into this thing, but maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this is just a load of crap. And then what about the mysterious people on the internet who maybe are listening, but maybe they aren't? Do they think I'm just terrible at this? Are we not getting more listeners because of how I'm DMing? I can spiral all day long. And so I usually do a lot of this before we record.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I don't have many concerns and nerves when it comes to recording, but the editing process and what I end up presenting of us to the world is stressful. So it's always a matter of, it's almost a 12-hour process at times to sort through, is this too much? Is this too little? Is it necessary at all? That's not really recording, just the end result of my presenting. That's terrifying.
Right. I see that the Lawful Stupid Fan Club has arrived. Hello, Lawful Stupid Fan Club. Okay, Joe, do you get any recording jitters before you start?
I was terrified when I auditioned, but ever since then I don't get any jitters before an actual thing because I'm friends with everybody now. So you sit down, it just feels like I'm playing a game, and there happens to be a mic in front of me, so it's very friendly. I mean, occasionally, depending on what's going on, there might be a little nervousness about a thing I might want my character is going to do that's going to surprise everybody. But I think otherwise we're all pretty chill about it. It helps that we're all in the same place.
Right. How about you, Dwayne?
I would say mine's twofold, right? I'm unabashedly confident. Even if I do something wrong, I'm confident in it, so that's easy for me. But all of us, we record at night, so we tend to drink when we record, and we have a thing. This is a 2-episode night, 3-episode night. We need to know for the pacing, because we've got episodes that we don't remember because we drank for 2, but then ran 3, so that's an issue.
Whoopsies.
So we just finished up campaign 1, right? So we just finished up that story. And that was probably the most nervous I've ever been doing the final 2 or 3 episodes, because you're putting a bow on everything, and the amount of planning that comes in from my part, and just hoping that what I do is going to resonate with my players and the story. That was very nerve-wracking to be all right, cool, we're going to do this, and then to my players are trolls, and so like when you're doing like these very like important moments, and then Skype, you're seeing like cute little funny messages, and you're trying to be serious, and like you're smiling the whole time with a serious tone, that you get so nervous. Like I can't laugh during this, and like that's why it's twofold. It's really important.
Yeah, I get absolutely terrified before every session for both shows. Half-Ready Heroes, I get terrified about not have paced everything right, and the players getting past what I've got kind of prepped. And then Oneshot Onslaught, I get terrified about them not following the module because it's written by other authors, so I want to do them justice. So I kind of want to, that's a little bit more rigid, and I'm always worried about. We recently had a mystery, and I'm terrible at mystery module, so that whole one was very terrifying to know, like if they were going to be able to follow along or not. So yeah, we also record at night, and we also drink. Yeah, that helps.
Cool. So we kind of touched base on this a little bit about earlier in our conversation about creative disputes, but I'm kind of going to bring it back to that. So there's probably a lot that you guys edit out. I do the editing for Roll Like a Girl too. I've recently taken on that role. Somebody else did it for first season, and now I'm doing it. So what they considered not important enough to go on the podcast, they took it out. But I think it's fun there. So how is it? How do you guys decide what goes, what stays, and especially whenever you have a conversation about roles, or that something might have been said incorrectly, and you come back and fix it, like something that might have been insensitive, and you thought, wait, no, that's insensitive, and I'm sorry, stuff like that. How do you decide what stays and goes?
As far as insensitivity, I feel like we all pretty much understand what our baseline is, so that's not so much of an issue. The majority of cutting out that I do, aside of Steven's, is just rule talk mechanics, something that feels like it kind of breaks up the flow of what the episode was, or you have to stop and look through a book or flip through papers because you're pulling together 14 different creators' ideas and trying to do justice to those. And it's rare that anything comes out of the episode that isn't rules, silences, or clearing your throat. Everything else stays as it was spoke and recorded that night.
Does anybody else on this table do any editing, or do you guys work with the editor to decide what goes and stays?
I do the editing for our side quests on North Quest, and it's a very similar answer. We want to make sure it's story focused, so any conversation at the table that wasn't directly related to what's happening, or obviously anything that's in character stays, but anything that's discussion about what's happening and what they're doing stays. But rules discussions, a 12-minute conversation about the spell and what it does, that's going to come out. But one thing I want to say is that editing out silence is almost as important as editing out your ums and your uhs. Right. Because if someone's paused a long time and you leave that 5 seconds in, and you've got, let's say you've got 1,000 people who download your thing, you just saved 5,000 seconds of people's time. And if you've got a larger audience or a lot more silence over the course of a whole episode, you save so much time with people over the course of days of time we saved with one episode for number of people end up listening to it. So try to cut the silences down to the point where it still flows nicely, still sounds like the person's speaking, is not a computer, but cutting out silence is as important as ums and uhs, in my opinion.
Yeah, so for us, I did the editing originally, and for the most part, we leave everything in. Like, we're really good about that, and now Ginger's here, so I'm going to spot him out. Ginger's our audio editor, and he's 1,000 times better than I'll ever be at that. And so, like, when we get into a rules discussion, which we're better about self-moderation, like when we get into the weeds, we're like, oh, no, keep going, move on. But we've had a couple of those like bleed through, and we work with Ginge, and he'll like, hey, this is gonna get real bad, and then like he'll like fast forward through it or whatever. And so it's like it's still there, but it's still in effect. But when it comes to like creative differences and cutting things out, so we today it was supposed to be like a vacation episode. It turned into what we called now the Hot Springs episode, which is awful. because you put a few players in a hot springs and then they make the worst amount of obscene jokes possible. And so, honestly, I walked away from that episode, and we've talked about it before, so I'm just going to say it in front of them. I went, we either can't use that episode, or we're going to have to cut out a ton of stuff because we drink, and I put them in a bad position, and so they just made a ton of jokes that weren't necessarily appropriate for our podcast. We, fell into that private mode, where you're, playing a private game and just saying everything. And we had to cut a lot. I think Ginge cut out 20 straight minutes of bad jokes. Yep, 100% top episode.
So, do you guys going into recording? Not a lot, but some of the podcasts that we're friends with, they're very family friendly. That's no cuss words at all. We are not. We are. Just to put it bluntly, it's hard for me to edit out all the bombs that are dropped. And it doesn't feel as genuine, because some of the characters don't say cuss words in character unless it's a really bad situation. So, do you guys work towards being actively family friendly, or do you kind of put an explicit tag and say it's just cuss words? Because that's kind of what we do. We just say it's just cuss words. There's nothing raunchy in here. It's just words.
So we can't get Devin to stop cussing.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's terrible
This is
about it.
better.
Insane.
Terrible. Same way with Dustin for us. He's just
Yeah, Dustin is awful.
It's terrible.
So
you
many
can't even
cuss
have
words.
a conversation with him without just 40 F-bombs dropped every other second. I'm just kidding. He doesn't cuss at all.
Neither does Devin. He won't do it. He's allergic to it. But we just cuss. That's who we are. We're genuine.
Yeah.
I'm trying my best not to cuss right now.
I'm very proud of you. You're doing a lovely job. Yes, thank you.
We don't cuss. Yeah, and
You
and
actively.
you don't have to edit out very much.
Yeah, there's been maybe in the 8 recordings that we've done 3 instances of one word in each episode. But being parents that kind of want to share this with our children, we try to focus it on that idea of I don't want them to hear this necessarily. And there's some instances where we blur that line a bit with the subject matter, like the violence and the alcohol, but it's not in such an over dramatic way that it's anything different than you'd see on any TV channel at any point. But language wise is kind of where we attempt to put that line. But again, the group that we have doesn't really, and unrecorded and interpersonal communication, it's all the time probably, but we know once Craig joins us, that's kind of the cutoff for that.
Craig listens.
Craig listens all.
North by Northwest has the explicit tag on ours just so we don't have to censor ourselves, but we're not potty mouths or anything. However, 5 or 6 episodes into after I joined, my sister was letting my nephews listen to it frequently. And there was one episode that was particularly bad where there were a number of curses in succession because something had happened. It was all in character and it was all appropriate response, but my sister texted me after and I can't let the kids listen to this anymore. I'm going to have to listen to it ahead of time and know where to stop for them. And that really made me stop and think about it. So, a little bit more for them, but in the end, it wasn't my decision to put that tag on the thing originally. And we haven't really changed much since then, but it did make me stop and think about okay, yeah, if kids are listening to this, maybe there is a bit of an impact, like you said.
I think you guys are better parents than I am, because I just tell my kids nah, this is not age appropriate. And when somebody tells me they listen, oh, my kid listens, oh no, why?
I do.
Hurt us?
My 4-year-old really wants to listen to our show, and because he's played he's played some simplified versions of Dungeons and Dragons with me, and he really wants to. He knows about the podcast, and he knows how to work Spotify and the Alexa, and he knows how to get to the podcast, and so he knows he's not allowed to. But we did just record a episode recently, so I do usually cuss on the show also, but it must be something I can turn on and off, because we did just recently have a guest episode that was just me and 5 guests, and I think that's our first ever episode with 0 cuss words in the entire thing. And and he's so excited for me to get that episode edited, because I told him, I was like, when I get that episode out, you can listen to it. and it might be 2 or 3 episodes. I don't know. It's pretty long, but he's really excited for that. But other than that, we usually just slap an explicit tag on it, and you just remind me that I can actually take that tag off for that episode, which is kind of cool.
Good for you.
I will say I think it's easier for me at least, because we made that decision to not have it in. It's just on my mind, like, okay, I just need to steer clear of that. Where I think if it was if that wasn't explicitly set out, I would not stick to it.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does.
I don't know why that episode. I just there was 2 of them. 2 of the guests were on family friendly podcasts. So, but then the other 3 weren't. But we just somehow ended up going 3 hours straight of playing Dungeons & Dragons, and nobody cussed. So I think it was kind of just I don't know.
That's a heroic feat.
Yeah, it was.
You get a new badge.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Well, it's an achievement. One of the things that we had problems with, I did anyways, I was a guest on a stream. I hosted a charity stream last year, and it was very family friendly, so I made myself a bunch of little post-it notes that said, do not cuss. And I almost let something like, oh no. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to not do. It's something that I think, and I feel like not every, but a lot of D&D tables find it acceptable. So it's really good that you guys are able to get into that mentality, thinking about your kids, because I'm not a parent, and I don't have to think about that often. So
I will say, there's not a right way or a wrong way.
no. It's your choice.
But they don't have an explicit tag, so they're better than us. But there's no right
There's
or
no
wrong way.
no.
So we're clear.
They just have to work harder at the table.
Yes, they do.
Okay, well, so coming into more of a production standpoint and a little bit of the nitty-gritty, I spent a long time looking up RSS feeds, because when I first started Roll Like Girl, I had no clue what an RSS feed was. I had to do a bunch of research, and I found out the hard way what to do. So, long story short, I now know what to do, but how did you guys get to that process? What would you tell anybody who wants to start a podcast? What is the best way to work with RSS feeds? How do you find one that you like?
See, I just went Simplecast and let them figure it all out.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's the answer. Pay a hosting company.
That's what I
Period,
did.
the end. There's no other way around that. Like, if you want to try and do the technical achievement of hosting your own RSS feed, you don't want that headache. Pay $8 a month, host your podcast, move on with your life. You have so many other things to focus on.
Oh, yeah.
But the biggest thing is getting into the other stores like Spotify and getting all the other podcast catcher of choice, because there's 1,000. It's like, which one do you use? I don't know. But my RSS feed is in those, and that's the hardest part. Getting with Spotify and YouTube and all those different ones to pick you up.
And I am a pro Simplecast person because I have emailed them so many times with so many questions. They know me by name, and they're like, "Oh, it's Sarah," because I use our Gmail, the account Gmail. But Simplecast is one of those really good tools that you can use, because you can look at the dashboard and you can see numbers. So you can get into the statistics of your podcast, especially if they get down to the nitty-gritty of where your podcasts are being listened to, how many people in this country are listening to them, how many episodes are listened to. And if you like the statistics and the analytics side of podcasting, for me anyways, Simplecast is easy for me to follow. There are some little hiccups on the new dashboard that's bound to happen. I don't know any other RSS feeds that or hosts.
Podbean does that. We use Podbean. It's really economical, and what I like about Podbean specifically is there's no bandwidth. There's no storage amount, so it's upload all the episodes. You don't have to worry about, oh well, I'm running out of storage and I need to upgrade. You pay this one fee and it's unlimited. And we have the same statistics, right? Where you're oh cool, this guy from Australia. I was actually talking about Australia in our Discord the other day, because I was oh, Australia, cool. And then you click the button again, and it's 4 zones in Australia, and I was I'm gonna learn something today.
Okay, and we kind of already talked about software. It sounds like most of you guys use Reaper and GarageBand for your editing, and some Audacity. Do you use anything else?
So all of my players use Audacity to record, and then our guests the same way, because it's free. You can download it. I actually don't. I run a Mac, and Audacity on the Mac for recording is okay. I actually use Audio Hijack. It's a program you can buy, and it's really flexible. You can go ahead and put compression or noise gate, all that stuff on the front end, and as soon as you have that tuned, like it just makes my audio come out crisp, and then as well as I can like do sound effects through it and stuff like that. So if I want to like play like clips or sound effects and make Jim's life harder, I can do that. I have that ability. So I recommend Audio Hijack if you're using a Mac.
Noted. Okay, so that's kind of the production crunch, and we can get tired of talking about it or not. It depends on who you are and how much sleep you had. So for the so for the DMs of the table, raise your hand. Are you a DM? Okay, cool. I was a DM. I'm not anymore. We exchanged roles on that one. So, do any of you guys host any games at home? Like, just not podcasting games? What is the difference? How do you feel that's different? Do you feel like there's a different presence? Like, you're a different person?
I think I'm not a different person. That would be crazy.
Well, I mean, like
yeah.
You're not presenting to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
You're presenting to your friends.
So for me, there's two big differences. One, and we've mentioned this, I'm working in a collaboratively built world, so there's a lot more in-depth prep that's going into fitting these 14 different nations that all were written separately with nobody talking to each other about them, and turning that into a world that doesn't feel like chaos is happening all the time and makes it feel real. So I have to do a lot more prep on just the world building connecting side, which is I haven't ever had to do that before. It's kind of a unique thing. Whereas at home I have my own world and I just do that. The other thing that I focus more on is I'm more aware of pacing and if we need to move on to something else, if something needs to happen and the timing of that. Because like when you're sitting around at home on the table and you're not recording, and it's not for other people to listen to, right? If your characters want to talk about their soda for 25 minutes and everybody's having fun, like who cares? Because it's about everybody having fun. But on the podcast, it is essentially radio, right? And so there's a element of, okay, does this fit into the story in a way that makes sense linearly? Is where the character's going? Is that a good place, or do I need to try to steer something that makes more narrative sense from a listener perspective? So I'm less focused about just like everybody having fun and more trying to take a bigger picture of what's happening in the grand scheme of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's still got to be fun, but you also got to think about, is it listenable?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. That was way less words to say what I was trying to say.
What I'm hearing is you guys are way smarter than us. We learned like all those lessons in season 1. Several episodes where we would get into details that didn't really matter. We have a guest episode where we argue with a shopkeeper for 45 minutes. For 45 minutes, we argue about whether she stole gold or not. I mean, so like we learned all those lessons in production, which was interesting because you can see us grow, but also like you guys already know those. That's not good. We look so bad. But
we got to learn from you.
Oh, you poor soul. You poor soul.
We learned it by listening to you, Dad.
That's a way to do it. The biggest thing for us, at least for me specifically, is the tone. The biggest thing, like, if you ever have talked to us, we're cut-ups. Period. The end. Everything's a joke. 100% everything's a joke. And that's not always a good story. And so, like, hitting those deeper moments, like, was a huge shift change for us and a hard, like, thing to do and not like make jokes, because like I said, I'm doing a very serious moment and they're making jokes. They're doing serious moments. I'm like, all right, cool. We have to chat that in. So that's big. And our censoring, like I said, like when we do private games, because we cut up, there's no topic that we won't actually joke about in a private setting, because we have that relationship because we're all friends.
Right.
And so that's big for us.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for my home games versus my show games is knowing it's got to be entertaining for people to listen to, not just for the people playing it. So, and I try to base it off of what I find enjoyable in podcasts. So if I'm listening to a podcast, I generally don't like if combat's an hour and a half long. So in my home game, that's fun. My players seem to enjoy it. I enjoy it. It gives people time to, go get snacks or do whatever they need to do while the other person's taking a turn. But in a podcast, I know the listener's not going to want to listen to them fight these 30 zombies for an hour and a half. It would just get boring. So I generally cut down the combat to about 2 rounds max for both of our shows. I generally bump up enemy damage and bump down their health, and that's kind of how I try to balance it, because I think that's the biggest change I make for home games versus listener games.
So I want to talk to that. We ran into that in the middle of season 1, where basically there was like a big war happening, and I kind of like homebrewed up something I call like cinematic combat, where it's more like, tell me what you want to do, we'll do a couple rolls, and then we'll describe it. So instead of it being turn by turn, it would be like one side does something, the other side does something, and that makes big shifts in the fight, because when you have that many like actors on the stage, you can't do turn by turn. You're right, it would become a slugfest. Like, we have a guest episode that is a slugfest, right? So it's like, being mindful of that. I agree.
The other thing I would say is I try to be aware of, I like what Adam said, is listening to what other podcasts do that you like, but also being aware of what you're good at and not trying to be someone else. I mean, the really easy example right now, is Matt Mercer. Like, we are not Matt Mercer, and that's good. Like, that's a really good thing, because each person in this room that plays D&D can bring something unique and special to the table, and you have to kind of find that and focus on that while still learning from other great DMs that are out there.
So do you, I know we kind of talked about it behind the curtain, but I wanted to bring it forward. We talked about listening to other podcasts. Is that how you guys find the different things that you like bringing to your games? Is that one of the ways that you do that?
I mean, definitely, yeah. I one of my favorite things as a DM when I'm listening to other podcasts is listening to specifically spell descriptions, and how a DM will describe what a spell looks like, because it'll always be different than what I imagine it, and I'll always be like, that's freaking awesome, and I'm gonna steal that.
Oh yeah, always shamelessly steal. I mean, don't like plagiarize, but learn from
I'm
everything.
doing it wrong.
Learn from everything you read and listen and watch, because even if you don't agree with everything they're doing, there's going to be something that they do that you can steal and make your own, and to improve your own repertoire.
I agree. Matt Mercer, Griffin McElroy, both of those are really good DMs to look forward to. Like, you listen, you can steal good ideas from them. That's what I do. I steal from the greats.
We are not the greats. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen a lot in our newer communities that are trying to start podcasts, is that, and it's not wrong. There's no wrong way or right way of doing it, but it's not their way of doing it, and it shows that they're trying to mimic, the wow moments. And it sometimes it does feel rushed, but that's story production. That's you trying to figure out how you are as a DM. And I think it's very important that you try to do that in any way, in any safe way that you can possibly do that.
So you talk about different demon styles. One of the biggest things that I notice between DMs is the level of world building. Because some DMs, like, I'm a huge world builder. I love world building. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do, because I like storytelling. So I will have like NPCs deep in a city, and they'll never see all of them, because that just helps me build the story, and I just enjoy doing that stuff. And then you have other DMs where it's like, all right, cool, they're going to that town, there's these 3 people they should talk to, everything else I'm gonna make up as I go.
And that works for some people.
No, it's perfect. Improv is great. I'm not like knocking that. It's just, it shows the different styles behind what you've got going on.
Well, we got about 10-ish. Oh, sorry, I can't count. There's about 8 minutes left. I wanted to give you guys a chance to ask us any questions, more specifically them. I'm just here for funsies at this point. So are there any questions that you guys have about podcasting that we might not have talked about? Yes.
So his question, for anyone who couldn't hear him, was for North Part of the Quest. We do layer on a lot of music and sound effects after the fact. I'm gonna say that I don't do that. I do a lot of the raw editing, and then David, who originated the podcast, adds those in after the fact when I send him back the edited stuff. But I know he does add them. I don't know specifically what he does to decide them, but it's become more and more as the podcast has grown. There was very little at the beginning, and more of it toward the end. So, where we are now. As far as I know from talking to him, it's basically just what free sound effects and music he has available. Because don't use anything that you haven't paid for that isn't open source. And just trying to find the points where he can squeeze it in or layer it on top that it sounds good and isn't going to detract from the actual things. My favorite things he's done actually are where he's used our own audio from previous episodes and then layered it in the background as some sort of like dream sequence or callbacks to earlier conversations layered just behind the scenes of the current conversation going on. Because to me, that's my favorite thing that I've seen him do, because that really adds a big dramatic element, like on a TV show or something like that, where you've got just the faded image or something aside that brings it up. I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but I don't do it on ours. I'm sorry.
Sorry, you're an editor and you can't ask a question. Just kidding.
Do it.
Okay. Freesound.org.
Yeah,
is an
freesound.org.
excellent one to go to if you're looking for sound effects. Carry on. Listen to the DM when it comes to sound effects.
He
'cause
tells me
players
this
have-
after we're done with campaign 1 that I have all the power over him, and now I've lost it.
Oh.
So to talk to that was a very important thing for me when we started our podcast, because I listened to Sneak Attack, which is a D&D podcast,
Yep.
and they're big on having sound effects for immersion, and I was like, that's really good. So when I was editing, I did that, and when we brought on Ginge, it was very much, hey, this is very important to me to have sound effects, and he's got an ear for it. Like, he knows, and we trust him, like, wholeheartedly to make that amazing, and so he's got really good sound effects that he finds, and he's really good about when he hears us kind of bicker and argue. Like, our last episode, he does that, like, cut effect, where it's like, and then we, like, whatever shenanigans we're doing. So it's stuff like that, like, can really be the fine detail, and you have to find that in your own podcast and where that's important. Like, he also makes really good original tracks. Not everybody can do that, but freesound.org is a really good spot for instrumentals or anything like that. And honestly, if you don't have some type of back layer audio across your entire podcast, you need to start adding that. That way you'll have zero like blank spots of audio in your podcast. That made a huge difference to have audio behind all of our speech through all of our episodes.
So why isn't Ginge up here?
He should be. Ginge, come on up and do an audio thing.
I have
It's
an extra-
fine.
have
No
an
one
extra-
has anywhere else
No,
to go.
we're at the end of this. It's too late now.
Okay.
Too late. So we have time for one more question. Does any? Oh yes, Lawful
Not you.
stupid.
I'm
No,
just
you
kidding. I'm
can-
just kidding.
hey,
Ask your question. Ask
Hey,
your
he's
question.
not the moderator. I'm the moderator, and I said yes, please.
So,
Excuse me, sir. That's more than one question.
that was I think there were 3 or 4 questions.
It was a
Yeah, so
combo
that was-
question?
Yeah, it was combo. I
Um,
see.
No, it's okay. So to handle it, the answer is not very well. So One-Shot Onslaught used to be weekly, and I was like, yeah, sure, I can take on a bi-weekly podcast on top of that too, and edit and prep for them both and run them both. And then it turned to, you know what? Let's do One-Shot Onslaught, where so say we do an hour long or a 2 hour long one shot. I'll split that into 2 episodes, and it will go part 1, part 2. And then I was like, okay, so instead of weekly, I'll do part 1, part 2, off week, part 1, part 2, off week. And then I did that for a little bit, and then I was like, I was getting behind even on that. So now what it is a One-Shot Onslaught, halfway to Heroes, One-Shot Onslaught, halfway to Heroes. And the way I manage that is, and then what was the second question is that the one about the favorite?
Oh, you have a favorite.
I would say, so Halfway to Heroes is my first time I've ever gotten into homebrew, ever. And I would think that that's probably my favorite. So Oneshot Onslaught, I'm running modules created by other people, and even in my home games, I always did the published Wizards of the Coast modules, so I've never in my life done homebrew until Halfway to Heroes. So it's kind of my baby, so I think that's why I'm kind of leaning towards that. And what was question 3? I do not remember. No. Okay, so I guess Oneshot Onslaught does technically get neglected because it went from a weekly show to a bi-weekly show now. So yeah, but as far as dedicating time per episode, they both get the same amount of, which is now 1 week of editing per show. So I wouldn't say it's neglected now if you compare it to Halfway to Heroes.
I am going to say something from a podcaster standpoint and social media standpoint. It is very easy for us as podcasters to get wrapped into other projects. We'll see people who go like, hey, I need a streamer for a charity event, or hey, you want to sign up for, I need help organizing this big community event, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's very easy for us to say, yes, let's go do it. And we get really excited, and then we start getting overwhelmed because we accidentally add on too much onto our plate. And as fun as it is a very high burnout. If you guys, anybody really, if you don't know how to manage your projects, that is the one. That's probably the only reason why I'm only doing just the one podcast and then this event. Is because I know me personally, I'm bad at managing time. I'm bad at managing my responsibilities sometimes. So it's about recognizing what your strengths and weaknesses are and being able to apply that to projects that you want to do. So that's just something to take into consideration. If you know that you can organize your time and you're not going to worry about burnout, go for it.
Don't say yes to everything at Dralacon.
Do not say yes to everything at Dralacon, or you will never eat and sleep. Dwayne.
I'm committed now.
I know you're committed. It's great. So that is the last. That's the last thing that we really had time for. You guys can find us probably after the show if you wanted to talk more about anything that we talked about. Again, I am Sarah with Roll Like a Girl. That's where you can find me, is at Roll Like a Girl. You can also find me on Twitter at mama_mcsnazzy. Where can we find you?
I'm Steven. Twitter is at @the_baddm.
Wade, it's not quite Wade on Twitter, or NQH Podcast for both of us. Mainly me.
Joe Frankovich, I'm with North by Northwest Podcast. You can find me specifically at Reality Storm on Twitter.
Well, that's creepy.
I'm Dwayne, and I'm with Lawful Stupid. You can actually find us at a table, and that has all of our social medias. So go visit our table if you haven't already.
Yeah, there's the group.
I'm Adam Deweese. I am at Adam_Deweese on Twitter, and at Oneshot Onslaught on Twitter, and at Halfway to Heroes on Twitter. And I
also at our booth.
Excellent. All right, you guys have a great convention. We will be popping around. I'll be here all weekend. Tomorrow night, I'm going to plug my own stuff right now. Tomorrow at 2:30, right here on this stage, will be the Roll Like a Girl live show. There's a lot of shenanigans that are ensuing. I'll be the DM for the time. So it'll be a lot of fun. There's going to be bards involved and a bard off. So, you guys have any live shows? Any live shows here?
Oh yeah, we do one tomorrow night. 7:30? No, 5:30. I think it starts at
right
5:30.
after us.
I'm really good with the calendar. Don't worry. I go where I'm told. But yeah, we do a live show tomorrow at 5:30. We'll have Ben from D&D Grandma and a ton of people on stage.
It'll be cool.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a real blast.
Cool. Right. All right. Bye. Bye. Toodles.
Bye.